Okay, so the truth is that there's no such thing as the perfect college for you, but I know that's why you click on this video, and I'm gonna explain why. Welcome back to my channel. This is Emily. So I know it's college decision season, and congrats to those of you who heard back from colleges and now you're in the position of choosing the colleges rather than them choosing you. And I know this process is daunting because you're basically choosing where you want to be for the next 4 years of your life, and it seems like a lot of weight on the decision right now. And that's why I wanted to make this video, to tell you what I think are some really important criteria to consider when you are choosing college. So before I start this video, I want to say that you don't have to follow everything I say. Take everything with a grain of salt, because you might value some of the criteria more than the ones I listed in the video, and it's totally fine because college should be your personal decision and you want to be the person who decides where you will be for the next 4 years. So before I start off, I just want to clarify that I am a junior at UC Berkeley with a double major in business administration and film studies. And when I was in the middle of college decision in April back in 2017, I also didn't really know what was the right decision to make. And mainly at the time, I was choosing between UC Berkeley and USC. So I'm going to use these two schools as the example and apply my own personal experience to the criteria that I'm going to list out in this video. So the first thing I want to talk about is prestige/ranking. And I feel like this is something that a lot of people care a lot about, and this is probably what seems like the most obvious criteria of choosing a college. I feel like parents are also especially stringent about this. They really care a lot about ranking and the reputation of the school, and I just want to say that the prestige and the ranking matters to a certain extent, but just because you go to a slightly higher ranked school doesn't necessarily guarantee that your college experience will be exponentially better. However, the difference that you want to consider is that some schools just objectively recruit better for certain jobs. So for example, if you want to go into film in the future and you want to be in Hollywood, you want to work in the industry, and you got into USC Film School, but you're choosing between USC and another Ivy League. And Ivy League is obviously most likely ranked higher than USC depending on what ranking you're looking at, but because you know you want to go into film in the future, don't go for another school just because it's ranked higher. Because even though it's important to consider ranking, you want to choose the school that works the best for you. So applying my own experience, when I was choosing between Berkeley and USC, both of these schools are great, are amazing. I was so excited that I got into both, and I knew I wanted to study business. So the catch for UC Berkeley is that you have to apply to the business school a year and a half into college. However, for USC, I got into their undergraduate business school in Marshall, so it was guaranteed that I would become a business major if I go to USC. I was also somewhat interested in entertainment, so it just felt like USC was a perfect choice for me. But at the time, I didn't want to limit myself to one major on the first day of college, and that's why I ended up going with UC Berkeley in the end, because I know for Berkeley, any department that you pick out are ranked really, really high in the US. I felt that the ranking of Berkeley would give me more flexibility in choosing whatever major I want, because I know whatever I go into, it's going to be a top program. I'm going to have really good professors surrounded by really bright students, and I felt like that's something I wanted to have access to. But one last note on the ranking of colleges, don't fixate yourself on the numbers and the statistics that each college has, because a college is so much more than that, and you need to consider a lot more criteria to decide whether that's a good school for you to go to. So yes, obviously it is important to consider what are other people's perception of the school depending which country, which city you want to work in the future. But don't use ranking as the only element that you're considering when you're choosing colleges. And that brings me to my next point, location. Location actually matters a lot more than you think, no matter how flexible you are with what kind of environment you want to be in. So when I was evaluating the location between UC Berkeley and USC, obviously I wanted to be in LA. LA has great food, it's close to everything. Hollywood is there's so much happening, whereas Berkeley is it's also kind of a city, but it's a lot less vibrant, and Berkeley is also not the safest area ever. So that one, USC definitely won in that case. But make sure that location is something you want to consider, because I mean, you'll eventually adapt to it in the end. For example, I'm like pretty fine with Berkeley now. I'm somewhat used to it. But in addition to whether you like the area or not, it also kind of ties into where you want to work in the future. Because, for example, a lot of tech companies in the Bay Area recruit out of Stanford and Berkeley. And I bet a lot of entertainment companies in LA just recruit straight out of UCLA and USC and all these places. So depending on the school, where you want to work in the future might be somewhat affected by where you attend university, but this is very much a case-by-case basis. So do your research and find out if your major places a lot of emphasis on which region you go to school in and whether that will be a huge deciding factor for you. So the next point is tuition. So college is really, really, really expensive in the US. So I have friends from Canada and they told me that their university tuition is only like a couple $1,000s, whereas in the US, it's literally 60 or 7K or even more for a private institution, which is crazy. So that's why tuition is something that you really need to consider based on your family's financial background and whether you want to take on student loan and were you able to apply to financial aid or scholarships? Like, how are you going to be able to afford college? Because I know that student debt can take a toll on a lot of people, and I am very lucky to be attending UC Berkeley because I am a California resident, so I get in-state tuition, which is a lot cheaper than out-of-state students' tuition. So in that case, when I was considering Berkeley and USC, Berkeley was clearly the much cheaper option for me. So if that's something that you're concerned with, it's definitely one of the top criteria you want to consider. Okay, so my next point, public versus private schools. So obviously when I was choosing between Berkeley and USC, I was also choosing between public and private. I wouldn't say that because it's a public institution, my education quality is lower, but certainly a lot of the facilities, the dorms, a lot of the hardware is a lot more ratchet than a private school. For example, my freshman year dorm at Berkeley, it was the three of us squeezed into a double. So there were only 2 closets for the 3 of us. It was a very tiny room, barely any space to move around. And that is probably something you wouldn't encounter at a private school. Like, I see my friends at USC living in like hotel-like dorms, which is something that I would never ever experience. But not considering the materialistic things, I think private schools usually do provide more accessibility to professors. I've heard from my friends that people in private school are a little bit more handheld by people like counselors or career advisors and things like that. So I would say that at a public institution, it's definitely more likely that you would have to fight to get a spot in a class or be able to talk to a professor or meet up with a counselor. It's a lot less accessible and less transparent. For example, at Berkeley, computer science classes are super, super popular, and I took a relatively easy data science one my sophomore year, and literally the first day of class, it was so crowded that people were sitting on the floor, and we were straight up in a huge auditorium, but people had to sit on the floor. And another thing that comes with the difference between public and private is the size of the school. So UC Berkeley has almost 40K graduate students, whereas USC only has 20K. I have some friends who came from really tiny schools, from really tiny towns, and coming to Berkeley was just a huge shock for them. And I wouldn't necessarily say that a big school is much better than a smaller school or the other way around. It mostly just depends on what your own personal preference is. I think it's still important to mentally prepare yourself to avoid any huge cultural shock when you get there. So obviously in this case, USC seemed like a much more ideal situation because the facility was much nicer and they have a much better student and professor ratio. I do want to say though, as you take more upper division classes, your class size gradually gets smaller when you're no longer in these big lecture halls. So I wouldn't say that at a public school it's completely impossible to reach out to professors or talk to anyone. It's just that you really just have to go out of your way to get it, but it is your responsibility to do it. So the next criteria, and I feel like this might be one of the most important ones, which is your major. What do you want to study? And I know a lot of people are probably undecided when they're going to college, and I think it's good. You want to keep your options open, like keep exploring and figure out like what you want to do in the future, because your career will literally be the biggest part of your life after you graduate, most likely. So when you're researching the majors, go to your university's website, check out all the different majors and courses that they offer, and see if they excite you. I know for me personally, like especially when I look through film classes at Berkeley, when I see one that I really, really like, I literally feel this tingle through my body, and I'm just like, I have to take this class, and that excitement just washes through me, and I just know that this would be a major that I want to be in. And UC Berkeley has one of the best film departments. The film theory is awesome there. the professors are all super accomplished in academia, so I knew that would be something that I want to have. So as I've mentioned before, I'm interested in both business and entertainment. So when I was choosing between USC and Berkeley, I decided to take the risk that I wanted to apply to the High School of Business at Berkeley in my sophomore year instead of just being directly accepted into Marshall and go straight to business school. And that's why for this criteria, Berkeley won over USC. But either way, major is definitely something that you want to look into, and maybe talk to people who attend the university if you know any, and see what are their perceptions of the major that you are interested in. Okay, last but not least, we have culture, and I feel like this is the fun part. This is when we don't really talk about academics anymore and talk about how you're gonna have fun in college. The first thing I want to talk about are clubs. So I am pretty involved on campus. I've been like in and out of a lot of clubs throughout the years, and it's really hard to gauge exactly what clubs there are at a university before you even go there. So if you can afford the trip, tour the school. Sometimes they might offer a club fair when admitted students come visit, and you can talk to the students there and see if there's something that really caught your interest. Personally, for me, I didn't really do that when I was considering the school's options, but it's something that I would recommend looking into. It's probably not going to end up being a huge factor in your decision anyway, because I think finding a community is something that you have to do at each school, and it's really, really hard to actually feel for which community is best before you even get there. But it's just something fun to look into and consider, and by looking into these clubs, it's also you being proactive, because if you know what clubs you want to apply to when you get to college, you won't be a confused freshman, but you'll actually be on top of things. The next thing I want to talk about is Greek life, and I know for a lot of people this is something that I really heavily consider, and it's a very popular way of immediately finding your community when you get to college. I'm personally not a part of the Greek life. From when I was visiting USC and talking to people who attended USC, it seemed like they had a pretty heavy Greek life culture, and 17-year-old me was just freaking out. I was like, I don't drink, I don't want to go out to party, like this all sounds really scary, I don't want any of that. So yeah, I was a little bit intimidated by USC because I didn't want to feel the pressure to party or anything. But now looking back, I feel like I can't really speak for what USC's culture is without even going there or knowing that many people, so it could be my own false perception as well, even till this day. But I think that schools have certain reputations for a reason. So if you know that you're not a super academia heavy person, maybe don't choose schools that are super theoretical or focus a lot on studying and not as much social life. And if you're not comfortable with drinking or going out, then maybe a huge party school is not the one for you. Basically, what I really wanted was that work hard, play hard culture, but not in a super intense or uncomfortable way. And that's why I thought that Berkeley would be the better choice for me, because I know Berkeley is super lit, like when it comes to their football games, a lot of fun tailgates, and people are usually pretty spirited, I'd say. We like to make fun of ourselves, but we are proud of Berkeley regardless. And I think that's why Berkeley stood out to me more than USC. Sometimes your gut feeling says a lot about the school as well. So if it doesn't feel right to you, I think it's good to respect your own instincts a little bit as well. Like, don't discount it completely. Yeah, so as you can see, Berkeley just seemed like a better choice for me, and that's why I decided to go with it. Even though sometimes I think about, oh, what if I went to USC? Like, what would my life be like? But honestly, I have no regrets. I have learned to love Berkeley a lot. So before I close this video, I just wanted to talk about some resources that could help you figure out what school is the best for you. So the first people that you want to talk to are alumni from your high school. So for me, I messaged a lot of alumni from my high school who attended UC Berkeley and USC, and honestly, I didn't know some of them super well, but I just wanted to reach out anyway because I literally had no one else to talk to and I had no other resources. And I think usually if you're from the same high school, people are pretty willing to answer whatever questions you have. And I think it's a great, more personalized way to get to know a school, like through a student's lens. And the other one is College Confidential. You probably know this if you went through the college apps process as you were choosing which schools to apply to, but it's basically a forum where people just talk a lot about colleges and the clubs, the culture, and everything. And people can be kind of dramatic on there, but I'd say that it's good to kind of get a feel for what people think of different colleges and look at different posts and what people say about schools. And another one is YouTube. I honestly I know YouTube doesn't really seem like a super academic place for you to look at which school to go to, but obviously there are people like me making videos like these that are supposed to help people choose what college they want to go to. Literally just search up the school you want to go into and you're probably going to see so many like, oh, dorm tour, a day in my life. I literally remember emailing a random YouTuber when I was a high school senior because I just so desperately needed someone to talk to and ask questions. All these resources are here and it's for you to use, so take advantage of it. And then another website that I recommend checking out is LinkedIn. So if you don't use LinkedIn, it's basically a professional social media platform where you get to connect with other people from different companies, or you can network with them, cold call them, cold email them, whatever. It's a really great place for building up your network. So what you can do is go on LinkedIn and type in the university that you're interested in attending. A new page will come up and you can click on alumni and see who are the people who have graduated from the school and where they work now. These are just some interesting things to look into, and it probably won't be a huge factor in your decision, but I think it's cool to see how people navigated their life from college and how they ended up where they are today. And yeah, that's it for the video. But in the end, I just wanted to emphasize that you can't really choose the right or perfect college for you because your college experience is really what you make of it. I hope your college choosing process goes well and best of luck with everything. And thank you for watching my video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!